Uber for Air model as one of the two business segments. My question is, if I want to book an Uber, I go on the app, I, pick the city I want to go to, the place and everything. Is that something Archer will control? Will you have the technology and the infrastructure for the ride share, or will you look to partner with a company on that?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So Archer will definitely build the consumer facing experience, right? My background is in software too. I'm excited for that part of the business. I think we can do a great job creating an awesome brand that attracts really great, folks to the platform. I do think there is also the ability to partner with other great folks. So meaning like take an Uber or a Lyft or, some of these other rideshare or multimodal kind of groups. They want, it's part of the chain. So if you think about, if you're going to book a ride, if you're going to book a flight to go from, let's say, JFK to LAX, right? And so you think about that full trip, right? So what you'll likely do is you'll book that trip, but then there's also two other legs of that trip, which is, taking your, as an example, Waymo, you're taking your Waymo, taxi to the vertiport. You're taking the Archer aircraft from the vertiport to JFK, and then you take, the United, plane from United to LAX, right? So if you think about like the multimodal group, I think there's a lot of groups that have already like reached out and indicated they wanted to work with us. So Waymo is a really interesting one that, I bring that up simply because Waymo has a really deep relationship with Stellantis. And so, that would be a group that we would be really interested to work with as a multimodal partner. They're one of the leaders in autonomy out there. And so I think that's like a good, hopefully user journey that you can understand moving from, booking the entire trip all through one app, by the way. So if you think about like, how do we sort of piece all that together? We're working with different groups right now to try to, solve those issues. But I do think that will start with the Archer consumer experience.
Perfect. So that rideshare business, looking at, dense cities first, you mentioned New York. How many cities are we looking at to start? And how many of these, highly populated cities do you see in the future in Archer?
Yeah, so we use New York as an example because a lot of people have taken that, New York to, JFK to Manhattan taxi, which is, I think like it's a killer, right? It's only 17 miles and takes you 90 minutes. I lived in New York for 20 years. I've missed flights planning for 90 minutes to go 17 miles. That's a good luck example, but New York is very real estate constrained. So it's not likely the first city that we'd launch into, although it is a very big helicopter city. If you look at cities like LA, Miami, Orlando, Dallas, those cities are very pro urban air mobility. They want this technology to happen. Those cities want to be technology leaders. They also have a decent amount of existing infrastructure. So take LA, over 200 helipads, 12 underutilized airports, and then you can also build retrofitted, parking structures into landing areas, right? So these vehicles weigh 6,000 pounds and they create minimal downwash, which means the air being blown down when these vehicles take off and land. It won't damage the infrastructure. And so you can actually put these vertiports in a lot of different places, but LA would be a really good typical city. We've been talking to the city and then several other these cities too. We will likely start with some of these core cities. It's obviously easier, to start in a city like LA that has great weather all year round, but the vehicles are certainly built for all weather capabilities. This is a global thing though. This isn't just, a thing that will, happen in, just a few cities. This is a concept that really will be everywhere. A lot of the investors in our PIPE process are global investors, strategic global investors that have interests in bringing these capabilities to their countries. And so this is a movement, to take mankind and move them into the air. This is not just about reducing traffic from JFK to Manhattan. That's the good obvious example. But what about, living in LA and going out to Palm Springs, for lunch, or probably to start, I'll call it Riverside, right? Something that's a little bit closer. It's a little further of a trip. Probably in 5 years, batteries will be good enough to do the full LA to Palm Springs trip. But, how about being in LA and just going to Malibu for dinner and back and not fighting traffic, right? Or just, I live in the Bay Area and I want to go, we do a lot of biking here. I want to go out to the Santa Cruz Mountains. Instead of, going out there, how about just flying out there, right? It's really about reconnecting, with these trips that would typically be, saved for vacations or holidays or weekends. You can now do them on an everyday basis, right? That's what makes us like super excited long-term, the vision here around this. People are just stuck in traffic and they don't want to be. It's not that when transportation has improved, it's not that people necessarily traveled longer. It's that they just traveled further. There's only so much tolerance people will like sit in a car for. This allows you to really start expanding and really kind of getting back out there, which is what makes us so exciting. And by the way, which is why we think the market will ultimately be so big for this.